Welcome to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, live from the virtual grill room of the St. Francis Yacht Club. We hope that you and your family are safe, sheltering in place in a comfortable environment, and we look forward to greeting you back at the Yacht Club just as soon as this pandemic is over. This is a very, very fun talk today, and it's a tribute to our sport that we have stories like this. We all remember there is nothing, absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as messing about in boats. Kenneth Graham's salutation from a century or so ago. Well, in fact, that is very much the case for our speaker today. For while he first got a little broken sunfish when he was 20 years of age, and he didn't really start to get into sailing until 1973 when he bought a Venture 17 and took a then 2-year-old Nicole Breault and stuck her up in the forepeak and began playing around. He graduated to an O'Day 27, then a Columbia 9.6 meter, and then an Atlantic. And then in 1995, he went looking for a boat that he could single hand, but also be comfortable bringing the family on the boat. And in so doing, he brought to us the story of Marionette. And while he's restored an old boat to make it very, very beautiful, his greater accomplishment is that he has created completely from scratch two really, really terrific sailors and great people. And it's my pleasure to get to know his daughter and son-in-law, who are great sailors, truly great sailors. And Ron deserves credit for creating the drive inside of his daughter and his son to be such great sailors. So here to tell us the story of Marionette and his love affair with the boat, which is, in my eyes, helped breed such great sailors in his family, is Ron Breault. Ron and Nicole Breault both, welcome to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you, St. Francis Yacht Club, for this invitation. And a special thank you to Nicole. She's a well-known member, I think, of your club. And she helped put together the slide from photos and text that I sent to her. And she's also held my hand through a couple of practice sessions. She should probably hold my hand through this one as well. The title slide that we were looking at here is the cover of my book, Voyaging with Marionette, and with Tyr, my dinghy that I built, by the way. When I bought and restored her, I didn't know that I was going to do something more than just sail on the coast of New England. She introduced me to a lot of things that I had no idea I was getting into.
She being the boat Marionette.
Yes, this boat is named Marionette, and the dinghy's name is Tyr. The audience will have to try to connect the two. That's apostrophe T-E-E-R. This picture here is her at the Nyack Bay Yacht Club, where she's been for 25 years. I've been a member here for close to 50. She was built in 1960 in Fall River by Marscott Plastics. She has a solid fiberglass hull, otherwise all wood. And she was built by a guy who was a helicopter pilot and engineer. He borrowed a trailer and went up to Marscott Plastics in Fall River, brought that fiberglass hull home, and built the wooden boat on that hull under a tent in the back of his house in Southport, Connecticut. I bought her from the Connecticut River Museum in 1995. She had been donated to the museum after 10 years out of the water, and she had an auction price minimum of $3,000. Nobody bid on her. When I came along a few days later, I saw her, and she was under a blue tarp that was torn, a little water on the cockpit floor and all. I kind of liked her, and I talked to the guy who was in charge, and he told me that I was thinking I might be able to get a good deal here since nobody bid at the minimum price of $3,000. The guy in charge of her sale said he once had a Dolphin 24, and he knew somebody would come along and knew what it was worth and was not going to sell it for a penny less than $3,000. So I paid him the $3,000. The Dolphin 24 was designed to the Morse Racing Rule. That's the Midget Ocean Racing Club. It was formed in the 1950s. It It was a handicap rule for small offshore racing boats up to 24 feet, and it was based on the Cruising Club of America rule, which encouraged seaworthy and sea-kindly boats with shorter masts and longer booms, and accommodations below were rewarded. Sparkman and Stevens were the technical experts on the CCA rule, and many of the founders of the Midget Ocean Racing Club were actually engineers working at Sparkman and Stevens. Next slide. This is a picture of Bill Shaw. He was a founding member of Morse and a project engineer at Sparkman and Stevens, and he was assigned the project to design the Dolphin 24. It's Sparkman and Stevens design number 1497, 19 feet on the waterline, 7'7" beam, displacement 4,350, so she's not a light boat. She had a lead keel, 1,750 pounds, bolted on the outside in my boat. Later boats had internal keels, ballast. She drew 2 feet 10 inches with the board up and 5 feet 2 with the board down. My board is a solid bronze board, 120 pounds. It's almost like lifting a small keel. The mainsail is 158 square feet. The Genoa is 255. There's a slide shot of the Dolphin 24. Next slide. This is a quick shot of the Dolphin 24 website. I'm the webmaster for the website. And on this particular slide, we're just showing what the index is on the side, which shows a search button, what's new, a for sale section, history, technical, stories, a forum, and then marine weather, local weather, and rosters. One of the things that's interesting about it is every posting that's ever been made on this website is listed in what we call the What's New columns. And you can go on the website and you can find every single posting that's ever been made over the last 13, 14 years. When I read of Bill Shaw passing away in 2006, I thought that somebody had to do something before all these guys passed away. Olin was nearly 100 years old. And so I decided to form the website. I got the opportunity to search the Sparkman and Stevens office in New York City, looking for documents for related to the startup of the Dolphin 24 design. And I found this tissue paper copy of a memorandum that Olin Stevens had written to his staff. And he says here, December 1958, he had just had a phone conversation with George O'Day, who was also known as the man who loved fiberglass, by the way. And this was Sparkman and Stevens' first fiberglass design. He was very anxious to get going on 2 new boats to be built to fiberglass, one of which he would have built according to our designs. The smaller boat he has in mind would be a junior ocean racer, which was sometimes what the Morse boats were referred as. I visited Olin Stevens at his assisted living complex up in New Hampshire a couple of times to help me get the website started. Walking into his apartment was just incredible. It was like walking into the New York Library, Yacht Club Library. On this mantelpiece up above his entry to the kitchen was a number of trophies, and that small kind of pot-shaped one in the very middle. I looked up close at it, and it was the trophy that he won in 1931 when Dorade won the transatlantic race. And that was the race with Dorade that put him on the map as the leading marine architecture designer of the last century. There's a roster on the website that lists all the boats by hull number that I found, 235 out of the 300 built. And they're listed by name and by hull number. And Nicole put together a little chart, if you will, of the location of where these dolphins are in the United States. There's a few of them in Europe, and there's a number of them in New Zealand, but they're basically cousins of the Dolphin, the Shaw 24 and the Falcon 24, very similar to the Dolphin 24, except that they have fixed keels, not centerboards. Thought it might be interesting for the people, members watching, to get an idea about boats that are out in California and on San Francisco Bay. And here's a picture of a couple of them. One is Spectra, used to belong to Phoebe McKinney. It's now Chris Young's boat. Referred to as pretty on email correspondence back and forth. I couldn't figure out whether we're talking about her or talking about the boat. Many times people call Dolphin 24 as pretty, so we'll have to leave it up in the air there. But she was pretty anyway. And Dick Loomis, who I think you all know, who's recently going through some tough times, I think, if you follow his Facebook postings, sailing his Dolphin 24 Yankee number 212 with his spinnaker and the Oregon logo on the spinnaker. The next slide is pretty interesting. I found out that we had a Dolphin 24 that won the single-handed class in the 1996 Transpac race. This is Doug Graham and his boat, Big Dot. He was a teacher, and he liked offshore sailing single-handed. And his comment to me was that he thought this Transpac race marked the grand finale of his teaching career, and he retired. This is a very interesting Dolphin 24 slide. The older people in the audience will remember this. This fellow is Dick Beal, and he had hull number 146. He walked into a broker's office a number of years ago and said, "I want a boat I could single hand." Dick Beal was about 4'6", 4'7", weighed about 75 or 80 pounds. He was a voice actor. He was famous for doing the Speedy Alka-Seltzer commercial. And when the broker heard all this, he said, this was going to be a challenge. But it turned out, coincidentally, that the broker had a Dolphin 24. And he knew that boat was a pretty sturdy boat, and the boat was going to have to be sturdy to carry all the power winches and power accessories that are going to be necessary for Dick Beals to be able to handle the boat. So when he got the boat all finished, he had already asked Dick how much, what was his budget, and Dick said, "I'm 70 years old. I don't need a budget here. Just get me the boat." So he got him the boat. When he got it ready and was ready to go in the water, he called him up and he said, "What am I going to put on the transom? What's the name?" And Dick said, "Think big." And this is a totally off the wall story that I got from a broker who kind of couldn't believe it when he heard it, but he actually experienced it. And I couldn't believe it when I got it as emails. But it's a fantastic story and somehow fits people who buy Dolphin 24s because they typically came from bigger boats or want bigger boats, but they're sailing smaller boats. So we have to think big. This is an example of one of the voyages that Marionette took me on. There's an organization called the Sparkman and Stevens Association. It's based in London. It consists of a lot of famous Sparkman and Stevens design, including Gilraid. And Marionette started competing for what they call their Global Challenge Cup, which was an award presented to a member yacht anywhere in the world based upon its performance compared to performances of other Sparkman and Stevens yachts anywhere in the world. Marionette won this award in 2011, 2016, and 2018. I had to go to Portugal to get it. And there's a picture of me receiving the cup and the Keeper Award. The thing that I found most interesting about this is in 2009, we finished second to Dorade. That really got my interest and I started paying much more attention to this. I'm still a member of the organization. I didn't buy this boat to race really, although I had two kids that were pretty good at racing boats. And we did a lot of racing and Marionette, well, maybe not a lot, but some racing, but we did very, very well. One of the places we raced to all the time or many times was the Off Soundings Club races in the spring out to and around Block Island. This particular picture was taken on the south side of Block Island against the bluffs. The wind typically is blowing up to the bluffs, and of course it gets a little stronger as the wind rises to go over the bluffs. And Marionette's always looking for a little bit better breeze, and especially where there's not much water. So with her board up, she's only drawing 2 feet 10, and big boats don't dare enter into this area. So we sometimes can get to sail a shorter course because of our draft and our ability to get in close to the bluffs. This is a couple of charts that kind of show the sailing area that Marionette was in: eastern Long Island Sound, the shore of Rhode Island, up to Buzzards Bay, the string of Elizabethan islands that ends up at Cuttyhunk, and then out to Block Island. We spent a lot of time in the early days in this area. The Off Soundings Club, of which I'm a member, for a number of years, is about 400 or 500 members, has great parties out at Block Island underneath this big tent. Our committee boat is Henry DuPont's Nor'easter, a 60-foot William Hand classic design boat. He keeps that boat at the same marina up on the Connecticut River where I keep Marionette sometimes. A lot of very, very sophisticated varnish work gets done on the boat and on my boat as well. One of the things about the tent is that the bourbon, Scotch, gin, and vodka barrels are determined by their signal flags. The Off Soundings Club members are sometimes challenged by figuring out what the signal flags are on the race course, but they never mistake the bourbon, gin, and vodka barrel signs. There's a couple of pictures that came from some of these regattas. One of them came from a video that was done called Rock the Block. Here's Marionette winning the pin on a clockwise circumnavigation of Block Island. Normally we have to go the other way because the wind's out of the southwest, but this time the wind was out of the northeast. We're here, we're winning the pin. Nicole's actually on the helm. Bruce is on the boat, myself and my son Mike. We're racing typically against bigger boats. And this is another picture that somebody got of us sailing home under our big red monster, we call it. It was when I had that spinnaker designed, I told the sailmaker, Kevin Farrar for our sails, make it the biggest spinnaker we can make and still stay within handicap rules. These are some of the trophies that we get. We get drinking glasses, bourbon and beer glasses, and the paper trophies we get to keep. This is a picture of Marionette at Payne's Dock out on Block Island on Great Salt Pond. Our battle flag is 2 arcing dolphins. And this particular regatta had a Spring Off Soundings crew of people that should be recognizable by your audience. That's perhaps not my son Mike in the lower left-hand corner, but Bruce Stone in the middle. I'm up at the upper right-hand corner, and Nicole's at the lower right-hand corner. Marionette catches people's eye when she's sailing, and in this case, she catches a legendary eye. This is Bruce and Nicole sailing my boat from Blue Hill, Maine, down to Bucks Harbor on Eggemogan Reach. That's the Deer Island Bridge in the distance there. And Benjamin Mendelwoods, who's famous for the wooden boat calendar, is lurking on the Eggemogan Reach all the time looking for pretty wooden boats so he can put them on his calendar. And so he came out and he saw this boat and he started circling and taking pictures. When he got up close, Nicole recognized him and said as he got closer, "I'm sorry, she's got a fiberglass hull." Made no difference, because what we really found out is that Benjamin takes pictures of pretty boats, whether they're fiberglass or wood, and he sold me that print, $270, and I sent it to Nicole. One of my voyages, as a consequence of buying Marionette, was building her a barn. She wanted one. I had found her under a blue tarp. She had been built under a blue tarp, and in the center picture at the top there, you'll see that I actually restored her under a blue tarp, and she said, "That's it. I want a barn." So I bought a CAD/CAM system and designed a post and beam peg construction barn. It's on a poured foundation. It's got 2 entries for 2 dolphins because my son also has a dolphin. But the blue tarps are still part of her dress wardrobe, because when my son has to sand his boat, we got to cover her and protect her. The second floor of the barn has a wood shop. I didn't know it at the time, but after having done several cruises up in Maine and getting criticism from observers saying, "How could you have a pretty boat like that and tow it inflatable? You ought to get yourself a proper dinghy." So I went to the John Gardner Boat Building School at Mystic Seaport, got my diploma, bought plans for an Ian Utrid feather pram, and I built her on the second floor. You can see some in-process building here. It was really pretty remarkable when I look back at it. And you can see her in the middle picture. That's her. She's also a pretty boat. And one of the things that in the lower right-hand corner is kind of interesting, instead of having a cart for her, we have a skeg dolly. You don't see very many of them, but it's two wheels that get bolted together around the skeg. It's a lot easier to carry around than trying to figure out what to do with the cart. This is a quick look at Buzzards Bay, Vineyard Sound, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and a couple of the highlight places that we visited, and also including the Cape Cod Canal and Cape Cod Bay. We spent a lot of time in this area. The Connecticut River is way over on the left, and there's the Niantic Bay Yacht Club and Fisher's Island, Point Judith. You can see Block Island there. There's an arrow that shows Cutty Hunk at the tip of the Elizabethan Islands. And up in the center, the first dolphins were built here in Fall River. An arrow points to the Cape Cod Canal. We'll get to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket later. This is a picture of West Harbor at Fisher's Island. And Marionette's here visiting. That's another Dolphin 24, sloop de jour number 21. It's on a mooring in the back. One of the things that's interesting about Fisher's Island is from Niantic Bay, in the morning, the wind is out of the northeast, so it's upwind. I spend the noon and early afternoon there. By that time, the wind has shifted out to the southwest, so it's an upwind sail going back. So getting to West Harbor is upwind, unless you can figure out a way to stay overnight. This is Mystic Seaport, and the 2004 Sparkman and Stevens 75th anniversary was held there. This was a 4-day event. The first day was the kickoff cocktail party in New York City, which was just incredible. Olin Stevens was the keynote speaker, of course. Friday was the arrival day for the yachts to come into Mystic Seaport. And Saturday was a concours to elegance event where they inspected the yachts to determine who was the best restored yacht. In this particular case, Elizabeth Meyer and John Rumenier are inspecting Marionette. And over on the right is the winner, Bolero. We've all heard of Bolero. The rumor on the dock was they spent $4.5 million restoring her. I did not spend anywhere near that much money on Marionette. As you know, I got her for $3,000. At the Mystic Seaport dinner, Olin Stevens was then 96. This is son Mike and Olin talking. At the dinner party, they had centerpieces. And if you look carefully on the lower left, you can see there's a little centerpiece there of a picture of a boat. And it turned out that was a Dolphin 24. They must have known I was going to sit at that table because that's why it was there. Anyway, it was a picture of Spindrift, hull number 18, which I have on the website. I don't know how it happened, but somehow that centerpiece made it home to my office. On Saturday, we were all invited to go over to West Harbor to a party that was being hosted by the International Yacht Restoration Association. The host yachts were rafted in an arc. These were 100-foot, beautiful wooden classic powerboats. And then larger sailboats were on either side, forming an arc. You anchored your boat in the outer harbor, and they sent a tender over to pick you up, and you were introduced as you came into the arc for the people that were standing at the taffrail on these boats. Your ticket was your favorite hors d'oeuvre. In our particular case, we had fresh and smoked salmon spread from Bernardine's in New York City, and my, not yours, but my homemade peanut butter on Ritz crackers, Marionette's favorite. To top it off, we left a few minutes early, well, maybe half an hour early, and we decided to put on a show. And as we passed the sterns of all these boats, we popped that big red monster, and it did a perfect job of popping it and sailed away. For 4 days of just an incredible time. We're going to go to Newport. Most of you have heard of Newport. It's one of the destination places on the East Coast, or Northeast Coast anyway. There's a little chart up in the upper left-hand corner, and the upper right-hand corner is Fort Adams, which is a park and a museum location which actually protects Newport Harbor. I'll get to the boat in the middle in a minute. And the lower left-hand corner is where you typically moor your boat when you're coming into the harbor if you're sailing a Sparkman and Stevens Classic. And in this particular case, if you look carefully, you can see this is where Dorade, Cherokee, Black Watch, Bolero were anchored. Marionette was there too, but Marionette knows the right people. That guy who owns the Dolphin 24 in the center is Jay Picotte. He's the curator of the Museum of Yachting at Fort Adams. And he told me that whenever we show up, give him a call. He'll get us a dock inside the Fort Adams Basin, which you can see here right in the center here. I think the saying is you got to know the right people. The next slide is Cutty Hunk in the lower left-hand corner. This is at the bottom of the Elizabethan Islands at the tip of Buzzards Bay. There's not much going on in Cutty Hunk except it's just an incredibly beautiful anchorage. And you typically are stopping in there on your way to Martha's Vineyard or Edgartown or on your way up Buzzards Bay, which is many times what we did. And then the next slide is Martha's Vineyard. And at the tip of Martha's Vineyard in the lower left-hand corner is Menemsha Pond. And you can see that you can drive out to the Gay Head Cliffs, but that's a long drive. And there's a little ferry that goes across the mouth of Menemsha Pond. The captain of the ferry was a fellow by the name of Fred Croft, who had a Dolphin 24. You can see it right here. He slept on it. He took the ferry back and forth and back and forth. And the name of his boat was Flipper when I met him first, but then later on they changed it when he got together with his longtime friend, Christy. They called it Paper Moon. Before that, it was named Quartet, and we'll get back to why. Anyway, it's hull number 41. There's another shot of Flipper next to the bike ferry. And I took that picture when I welcomed him back from his trip down the Intercoastal Waterway all the way to Florida and back. And he kept on sending me email updates on what was going on with him. And after a while, I figured out how to access the harbor cameras, the cameras that are sitting in some of these harbors. So sometimes I'd have a picture of his boat before he even contacted me. This is a picture of Christy Scott, was a longtime crew and a very good friend of Fred. When he was looking for a stove, an oven stove for the boat, he came across a Mark Twain quote, which he thought was special. And basically it says, you're going to be disappointed by the things you didn't do more than pleasured by the things that you did do. Catch the trade winds in your sails. This is a picture of Christy baking chocolate chip cookies on Flipper, named later Paper Moon. This is a picture of Fred checking his boat in at Camden to the Dolphin 24 New England Championships that we had there. He's got his he's in the parade and he has his parade flags flying. And on the right is a picture of Fantasy Farm, which is where Christy Scott lived. And we'll get back to that in a little bit. Oh, we got also a picture here of the trophy that Fred won for winning the Around Islesboro race in 2016. This is a typical situation where a Dolphin owner just keeps me posted on things that are interesting to him that he wants to share with the Dolphin community. This is a picture on the upper left-hand corner of Fred and Christy putting the boat away for the winter in Camden. Below that is a model that was built of number 41 way back when it was first bought by a guy by the name of George Scott, was the first owner. When he sold that boat, the new owners did not, when they sold it, they did not pass on that model to the new owners. They kept it. And then many, many years later, I was contacted by the woman who is now a widow, and she said she had this model and she understood that we had a website, and if I could track down the owner of Quartet, she would love to give it to him. So that's the model in the lower left-hand corner. Fred passed away in February 2018. When I went up for the services up in Lincolnville, I was invited by Christy to go upstairs. When she saw me, she said, we got to bring the model down. And we brought the model down, and there were people all around kind of asking what this was all about. We placed the model on Fred's coffin, which he, by the way, built himself because he knew he was at the end of his days. Anyway, it was a hell of a story, and I'm still in touch with Christy. And by the way, Christy just bought a copy of the book Voyaging with Marionette. This is a picture of Marionette at Eggertown. In this particular case, I picked a picture of flowers on our galley table. This is the table which will seat 2 or seat 4 if I want to expand it. We won't get into that detail now. But my wife was coming out for our anniversary on the ferry. Marionette has solid mahogany cabin walls, mahogany trim everywhere. Down below, there are the steps coming from the companionway down. The lockers, I built the lockers myself, including the electrical panel. On the port side is a galley. Used to have a full refrigerator there, well, half a refrigerator, that I took out and decided to make it into a seat so that person could sit down and join us for lunch. And you'll see the original hand pump in the galley. And storage, of course, is in the back. On the right side is our butane stove and the galley. On the, I beg your pardon, on the starboard side is our seat, and we use cushions that we can use in the cockpit as well. If we go to the next slide, we go up forward, you can see the V-berth. The head is underneath that center panel in the V-berth. It'll convert to a king-size berth for 2 people. The cushion covers were made by my mother. And you can see with the cushions gone where the head is. The holding tank is forward of the head. That panel up in the forepeak is actually disguises the anchor locker, which is accessible from the deck. And the head is vented, and there's lockers on either side. On this particular trip, we were going on the Cape Cod Canal. And one of the things about the Cape Cod Canal, as beautiful as the bridge is, you get scared the hell out of you, because if it ever drops, you're going with the current all the time on the Cape Cod Canal, and the current is 3 to 4 knots favorable. Something goes wrong with your motor, or there's no wind or something like that, you're in big trouble. You're right up against it. It's the railroad bridge. Scary. In any event, we made it through the canal, no problem. Nicole and I were sailing across Cape Cod Bay and Massachusetts Bay to Cape Ann, Gloucester area. And we were doing a lot of jibing. There were whales and dolphins all around, which is classic for the area. And all of a sudden I noticed that the track on the mast where the boom fitting goes pulled out. Now what? Well, I have a parts box with all kinds of stuff in it, including big stainless steel hoops. And I was able to fix it. And when I got to Cape Ann, I went to a Marina boat builder guy, and he told me he would have to get the mast out so he could weld. And I said, well, I can't do that. I'm on my way to Maine. I kept that fixed on the boat for the whole trip to Maine and the whole summer, and it lasted no problems. Got lots of comments, though. The lower right-hand picture is a picture of Marionette at a floating dock at the yacht club at Cape Ann. Next slide. Nicole took off, and she was replaced as crew by my son, Mike. He had a day to spend with me, a day and a half. We had to get him up to Portland, Maine, so he could catch a plane the next morning to get back to New York City. So we left Cape Ann early in the morning, fingers crossed. I consider this to be my best sail ever. We had whales breaching on both sides of the boat, dolphins arcing in the bow waves, and we kept on going. And instead of stopping in Portland, we just kept on going all the way up into Casco Bay, trying to think of where were we going to stay that night, because Mike had to get a taxi early in the morning. And with our glasses, we spied this marina, and the sign on the marina said, if you look at it carefully, the Dolphin Marina and Restaurant. How could you beat that? It was a great restaurant. We tied up at the dock. We had a great meal, and my son had a taxi the next morning to get to Portland, and I took off to continue my single-handed sail down east. I did this a few times, single-handing up there and with crew. And it takes a long time. It's 350 miles to get up to Penobscot Bay. 50 miles a day is 7 days, assuming you have good weather. So I started thinking, let me do this on my trailer. There's Marionette on our trailer. I can make that trip in 5.5 hours, leave early in the morning. The dinghy goes in the bed of the pickup. I have a good friend who has a pickup who was willing to take this trip with me. And I follow in my car, so I have a car up there. And when we cross the border going into Maine, I consider this the border to another land, the Maine border. I always try to grab a picture for the record. Arriving on this particular trip at Journey's End Marina in Rockland. This is an incredible marina and boat yard. We arrive at 11:30, unload the dolly, untie the mast, unstrap the boat, and leave it. And we go for our lobster rolls. We come back an hour and a half later, the boat's in the slings, ready to be launched. Now, how can you beat that? And this has happened several times. And the real work starts because I got to put in the stanchions and get the boat all rigged out and all the rest of it. Shower at the marina there, vodka gimlet, a pub dinner, and then a sleep by 8:30 at night because I got to leave early in the morning. On this trip, we're going to cross Penobscot Bay to the top of Eggemogan Reach over to Bucks Harbor. Bucks Harbor is characteristically known by its heart-shaped island that protects the harbor. That island, if you can believe it, was owned by the Kurt family for nearly 100 years. Jim Kurt owned the Rachel K, hull number 4, Dolphin 24. When we connected, he said, I've got a mooring in the cleft of the Harbor Island. Anytime you're here, you're welcome to use it. It's who you know. The next plan was to go around down Eggemogan Reach and up to Blue Hill. But when Jim sold his boat, when we would show up with Marionette, or I would show up with Marionette, we would always go sailing, and we would sail around the little islands and the coves that mark the top of Eggemogan Reach. It's just a beautiful area. And it was such a nice area that my family and I decided to start renting a summer cottage for our summer vacation. But I'll get to that in a minute. Let's go back for a second, Nicole. One of the things that's nice about Bucks Harbor is everybody knows about it, and you can see that the Down East magazine on its cover for the 200 Reasons to Love Maine has on its cover Harbor Island. That was in their bicentennial issue 2020. Bucks Harbor Marina is known for having the best outdoor showers on the East Coast. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but don't quarrel from me. Has chest-high barriers for you to take your shower and you get out to look at the harbor while you're taking your shower. This is a picture of just up the shore up the coast from Bucks Harbor is Weir Cove. And we stayed on a farm here. Our cottage on the farm was called the Deanery. We have a mooring in front of the farm, in front of the cottage, and we could see the schooners going back and forth up and down Eggemogan Reach. It was an exposed area, so we had to watch out with bad weather and hurricanes, but I knew where to take my boat in a hurricane. I could take it to Harbor Island. We're going to go down Eggemogan Reach to Brooklyn Boatyard and the Center Harbor. They like to think of themselves as the boat building capital of the world. There's a few people that like to say that they are. But in this particular case, they have to make a pretty good case. The Wooden Boat School is that big bay that is at the very end of the peninsula there. And the Brooklyn Boatyard is in that mooring area that's sheltered by Chateau Island. Marionette's, one of her favorite places to moor is in the lee of Chateau Island, and you can see her right there in the lower picture. And you row tier onto the docks and then walk to the Brooklyn Inn and get to the pub. And if you're a webmaster, you got to set up your laptop, same one I have here. I've had it for a while, and have a beer and wait for the chef to show up and start cooking you a pizza. This is a kind of mixed up slide here. Leaving off Center Harbor, I pulled into the wooden boat anchorage on a dark, rainy day, and I wasn't sure where I was going to go anywhere or do anything. And I pulled in and picked up a vacant mooring. And there for a couple hours. It looked like it might be getting a little bit better. And as I was pulling out, I went by the stern of a boat that had on the quarter panel on the port side the name Ragtime. I recognized it as a J105, and I said to myself, J105, Ragtime. Who would name their boat Ragtime, a J-boat Ragtime? So as I'm pulling by the boat, it's a blue tarp over the boom, protecting them from the rain. This guy with a Tilly hat pokes out his head, and I pointed to the transom, to the quarter panel. I said, Ragtime, J-boat, you must be. And I heard a chuckle from underneath the tent. It was his wife chuckling. I obviously wasn't the first person who recognized the connection. We chatted for a while, and then as I'm pulling away, he says, Ron, is your boat an early Dolphin? Yes, hull number 12. She's a beautiful boat. Now you got to remember, this is probably the leading marine architect of the last 25 years or more. And I know him. He's a member of the Off Soundings Club. I've got a couple of other stories I'm going to tell, but I'm running short of time. So I'll get back to him if Ron lets me. One of them is Ladies' Night at the Stonington Harbor Yacht Club. Rod and I were there. The Commodore came in and said, we're sitting at the bar. Why don't you join us? We did. So continuing my trip out of the wooden boat anchorage, there's a little rocky channel called Nesquig, and you got to have shallow draft and a centerboard up to do this. It was foggy, excuse me, it was foggy, and I decided I was going to go inside. So you can see my track, it's the red track. Normally, there's a big lighthouse on Fly Point that should show up on your port side. The big lighthouse showed up on my starboard side. Uh-oh, I turned too early. I had to turn around and go back out again. The record is clear. I should have taken the conservative white track and gone around it, and this way I could see all the buoys. But anyway, it was a memorable trip. Going up Blue Hill Bay, I passed my old Atlantic, A91. Her name was Relish. By the way, the kid's name for their Blue Jay was Pickles. There was a connection. Approaching Blue Hill, there's a landmark that they have. It actually is a landmark. That's Blue Hill. And I anchored under the lee of the Kalidjawidjawag Yacht Club. A real test here is, can you pronounce this? Then they give you a really good mooring, get close, Kalidjawidjawag. Coming down Blue Hill Bay, you can go left or right. If you go right, you're going on Eggemogan Reach. If you go left, you go to Mount Desert Island. When I go into Mount Desert Island, one of the things I like to do is I either pull into Bass Harbor or Southwest Harbor or Northeast Harbor. I never go to Bar Harbor because that's where the tourist boats are with thousands of tourists on them. But one of the things that's really nice about Mount Desert Island is they have free bus transportation. So you can put your boat at one of the harbors and just get over to the bus stop and go all around the island and get to see everything that everybody wants and then come back to your boat. This particular trip, I was going to Southwest Harbor to meet up with Todd Dunn, who was a model builder, and he had a boat called Tortuga. This model that he built for me was given to me by the Off Soundings Club for my 6 years as treasurer of the Off Soundings Club. That's with 500 members, everybody paying, $200-300 in dues. And they didn't lose any money in the 6 years. So they decided to reward me with a nice model. I found out more about the model, and I decided to go up and talk to the model builder if I ever got the chance, and I did. And so he invited me to go up on a tour of Somme Sound, which is the large fjord on the east coast of the United States, of North America, actually. And this is his boat. He had an Allied Princess 36. And he had a hobby of building models, and he built a model of this boat, and so many people liked it, he all of a sudden got in the business. So we went through the Southwest Harbor tour and up Somme Sound. The New York Yacht Club tour was there at the same time, so a lot of classic boats. I got to get you to Camden so I can end up this presentation. So instead of taking you on the Eggemogan Reach route, We're going to take you the southern route, which is via Swans Island, Stonington on Deers Island, and Camden. That's a 3-day trip for a single-hander and a Dolphin 24. And then we get to Camden. This is a picture of Camden from the Camden Hills. They're in a harbor. You can see the schooners there, the outer harbor, Curtis Island, and all the flags telling you what's where. This is the fireworks display for the Camden Classic Cup. Now, this is a regatta that I joined because I could not join the Eggemogan Reach Series because you have to be an all-wood boat. But here they would let classic boats come in, designed in 1975 or before. And so I raced. The first one was in 2016. This is a picture of Marionette at Camden. And the slide in the middle at the top is Mike and myself paying close attention to the race committee. Lower right-hand corner, this is our award. We got first place. The party at the end was at the Camden Yacht Club, 10 o'clock fireworks. The next year, we got 7 Dolphins to register for the Dolphin 24 New England Championships. 2 of them couldn't make it for a variety of reasons, but we won it. And that's Drew Lyman presenting us with the first place trophy. Drew Lyman Morris was the host of this event. Second place was a Jack Daniels trophy. There's a whole story behind that. I don't have time to tell you that, but it's a nice one. I built the trophy box, and the next year we had to, because they didn't allow us to give hard liquor for trophies anymore, we had to develop a new trophy for second place. That year we ended up second place because Marionette liked this trophy. That's the second place trophy. In 2019, there was only 2 Dolphin 24s showed up. It was very, very windy. They assigned us to a day sailor class, lots of gaff rig boats, and courses were set up for reaching courses. This is not a Dolphin's favorite racing environment. We like to go upwind and downwind in winds at 10 to 12 knots. Anyway, Mike and I are sailing. We got a reefed main and a pulled out swell jib. This picture was taken by Allison Langley, and we decided it was a keeper, and we thought we could end this particular presentation with this slide. This year's Camden Classic Cup was canceled because of the pandemic. And if anybody's interested in Voyaging with Marionette, which has a lot more stories, they can go to the publisher, who has an online bookstore. Voyaging with Marionette's the title. And any questions, they can contact me. And thank you very much, Ron.
Great, Ron. And Nicole, thanks for supporting your pop through this presentation. So, Ron, a couple questions. How many days a year are you on the boat? Your boat, Marionette?
How many days that I own the boat?
No. How many days in an average year are you on the boat? How many days a year do you go touch the boat?
Boy, that's a good one. Some years are incredible. I got the boat in the water usually by the early part of April, and then I don't take it out until the middle of October. I'm not on the boat every single time, but even when she's at her Atlantic Bay Yacht Club, I got to go down and check her out, make sure she's okay, and all that stuff. And the yacht club is only 10 minutes from the house, so that's easy to do. But when I'm cruising, especially when I'm up in Maine, I'm usually up in Maine for, I don't know, 30 days, but they're broken up, you know, I'm for 4 or 5 days, then back home to mow the lawn, 2 or 3 days, back and forth, back and forth.
So are you on the boat 60 days a year? 70 days? Are you on the boat 60 days a year, 70
60?
days a year? 100? Yeah.
Without actually checking my notes, I would say yes.
Got it. What's the longest sail you've taken on the boat? Longest distance?
Oh, boy. Well, as a single-hander,
You mentioned
not go
350.
overnight. So I always try to find a place to go in to a harbor so that I can get rested and not be out there as a single-hander when the wind's up, you know, blowing hard at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But the best I can do is 50 miles in a day, and going up to Maine to Penobscot Bay is a 350-mile sail. So if I got good weather, I can make that in 7 days. Into a harbor, make sure the boat's tied up, go out to find a bourbon or a vodka gimlet barrel someplace, and go to bed early and take off early the next morning.
What about instrumentation on the boat? Do you have an autopilot?
I do. His name is Otto, O-T-T-O. He doesn't drink. At least he doesn't drink fluids. He drinks electricity. Oh yeah, he's one of my most important pieces.
So you have, what do you have, GPS? What do you have? What else do you use for
I have a
navigation?
GPS. I personally like charts, and I prepare my trips with charts and all the rest of it, but I do have a GPS. And a couple of times, I have to tell you, confession-wise, I should have had my GPS out in the cockpit with me, and I didn't, and I hit a rock, and I shouldn't have. If I had the GPS, I would have known it was there. I thought I knew exactly where I was.
Nicole, can you remember the very first time you were ever on a boat of any kind?
I do remember the venture. I was very small. I think we had it, you know, but I was 2 years old when I was first on it, and I don't remember that. But I do remember going to that marina to go for sails around Duck Island off of Westbrook, Connecticut. And I might have been 3.5 or 4. But my first memories of being on a boat were on Chrissy, our O'Day 27, named in honor of my mother. And we would go to these seemingly far off, distant, enchanted lands. And I didn't realize that they were really just maybe 20 minutes of a drive up the shore. But to us, it was a day's journey. And we were always greeted by name, either of the boat or my father, and they had a mooring waiting for us. And I thought we were just special travelers. It was amazing.
So talk to me about a fun time in a race with your dad.
Oh, well, the fun times, it really is sort of a holistic thing. We have a saying that if you can see us, we're beating you. We have a great rating, and we're really tough to beat in you know, these day-long distance races. But you know, there are key points in the race where we either know that we're gaining because we start playing the centerboard and getting in close to shore where there's better pressure, or you know, sailing less distance. Or we think that we might be actually losing ground because it's super windy and the bigger boats are starting to, you know, distance away from us, and we're pushing the boat harder than sometimes comfortable. And almost invariably we come in after the party has already been well underway. We put everything away, the award ceremony takes place, and we've won.
So when is the first time, Ron, when was the first time you realized that your daughter and your son were going to be great sailors?
Well, this is really kind of funny. You know, at the yacht club I was the fleet captain and was responsible for junior sailing. And my son wanted a Blue Jay because there were Blue Jays sailing competitively at our club. And so we went to Fisher's Island, by the way, and I actually fixed it up. And later on, Michael would come back and said, "It's too heavy, Dad," because I put in a reinforcement around the mast. But anyway, a couple of years went by, and Mike got himself an International 420. And Nicole came to me and said, "Dad, they're going to sail away from me. Everybody in the club has got 420s." And she was a pretty young girl. And but we got her a 420. And Mike went out and won the International 420 National Championships, and Nicole went out and won it, the first woman to win it, and she won it twice. And she won it with Mike's old crew. Never mind having a girl as the helmsperson, but have a guy as the crew was incredible. And it was Mike's crew. I'll never forget when Mike said he had to have a crew that was bigger and stronger and had a big head, because if you're cantilevering out on a 420, you like to have a tall, thin guy with a big head. When he decided to do that, and we were sitting on the couch in our living room, our family room, and I told Nicole, I said, when he calls Mark and says he's going to not ask him to crew for him this year, you have to get the next phone call into Mark has to be from you, because Mark knows what the hell he's doing. And he did. And she did call him right away.
Yep.
So Mike is also a great sailor. Nicole has told me as much. But tell me the first time you met Nicole's soon-to-be husband. When did you meet Bruce, and what did you have to say about what kind of sailing skill that boy might have? He's only been Sailor of the Year twice at St. Francis Yacht Club. So I want to hear what the father-in-law-to-be would say.
Yeah, I felt sorry for him. What are you going to do? I just hope he had the patience and the, whatever it's going to take to deal with it. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, I had the problem with my boat all the time. I'm sailing with my 2 kids, and so I make sandwiches. What are you going to do?
Yeah, you put Bruce and Nicole both on the boat. That's a really hard boat to beat. So a couple more questions about Marionette. Who does the varnish on Marionette?
I did for the first 23 years, but 2 years ago, I raided my kids' inheritance pool, and I had the guy at Cove Landing Marine, his name was John Leonard, who does the work on that 60-foot hand motor sailor that is our race committee boat. I had him personally do the varnish work on the boat. But thanks, Mike and Nicole, for paying for it.
Okay, so she's a fiberglass boat, but she's got wood trim. What kind of wood is the trim?
It's a plywood deck. It was with marine plywood deck that was covered with a that cloth material they used to use, and all the trim is solid mahogany.
Honduras or Philippine?
That's a good question. Next book will have it.
Now talk about the book. How'd the book start?
Well, that's kind of interesting. We had some interesting time here at home in 2018 where I wasn't able to take the boat up to Maine as often as I wanted because my wife had some medical challenges. And so I had a lot of time on my hands, and I started putting together the idea of writing a book. But importantly, that October, I read an article by John Rumanier, Farewell to the Gulf Stream. And he's 74 years old, he's up on the bow of some 60-footer, and everybody in the back is wondering whether or not he'll ever make it back. So he writes this article, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm a single-hander. I was older than 74, and I'm thinking, maybe I ought to be thinking about doing things a little bit differently. And so I thought maybe writing a book wouldn't be a bad idea. So I started doing it. And then, of course, the pandemic came along, and we didn't put the boat in the water at all this year. There was nothing else to do. So I just kept on working on writing a book. And I sent the draft copy to John Rumanier, and he liked it. And he decided to give his copy to the New York Yacht Club. It's on their presentation table.
Okay, so now back to the boat and sailing experiences. Give me a roughest weather story.
A who?
Roughest weather sailing in Marionette. Tell us a rough weather story in the boat.
That's an interesting question. When you're a single-hander and you're going up toward Maine, you know that at 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon the wind comes up, and it's usually coming up in back of you. So you're not sure what it's really like until you have to head upwind, but you're going downwind, so it's not so bad. You're reaching, and typically when you're by yourself, you're not flying a spinnaker. So you've got a false sense of security. But then when you turn a point and then you got to bring the boat back up again, you're pretty close to land, but usually waves are bouncing off the rocks and things like that. So all of a sudden the boat is bouncing up and down. That happened to me a number of times. And I'm not answering your question as to what is the worst trip. I know that I had several trips like that, to the point where I made a promise to myself that as a single-hander in the afternoon, I want to get in where I'm going at 2 o'clock, if I can, before the wind really picks up as a single-hander.
I can add a little bit to that. I know that I've spent a lot of time driving or helming Marionette, and when we're on a broad reach and the waves start to kick up, you can, I mean, the boat's pretty stable and it can kind of handle it, but you're on board and it doesn't have a long water line. And so it gets kind of pushed around a lot. And the rudder is, a boxy, it's not very high performance and efficient. So you find yourself really struggling to keep the boat tracking. And so that particular condition with the wind aft and a sea state building is probably the most challenging. I would agree.
So Ron, of Nicole's many accomplishments in sailing, which makes you the most proud as her dad?
Oh, man, that's always an impossible question to answer. Well, I'm going to look at it personally. When she called Mark Vanini and said, "Mark, will you crew for me next year?" I was one of the moments I couldn't believe, because I knew Mark was such a good crew, and Mike had taught him just about everything you needed to know about how to set up and deal with a 420. I knew she was going to get a great crew. And then, of course, when she won the first woman to win an international 420 national championships, that was really special. When she won it the second time, ho hum, what are you going to do?
And I know Nicole, and Nicole really doesn't like to race as much against women. She likes to just race against the best sailors. That's one of the incredible great qualities of her as a tremendously great sailor.
Well, one of the times I remember was I was the president of the International 420 class at the time, and I took U.S. teams overseas to compete in world championships. And I'll never forget one time, I'm not sure whether I added this to words to it or not, but everybody was getting their boats set up on shore, and we're talking 100, 120 boats racing in the Worlds, and very few women racing in the Worlds, because there was a women's World Championships, and then there was the Open World Championship. Very few women in that. And Nicole would walk down the dock, look back at Mark and said, "Set it up the way Mike would set it up." That's what she's telling her crew. And then she could go spend her time talking to everybody else. I mean, I always thought that was a kind of an interesting way to look at that problem.
She's very gracious that way. She has said to me she thinks Mike's a better sailor. I don't see any evidence of that. But you gotta feel really good when your two kids are so good. Either of them they're both great sailors. So this has been a very fun Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. Ron and Nicole, thank you very much for bringing a family story to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. And you've got to feel very, very, very proud, Ron, not just of having a beautiful boat, but of having a beautiful family and actually breeding really, really thoughtful, responsible, great citizens who also happen to be brilliant sailboat racers. So thanks so much. You're about to say something. How do you respond to that compliment?
An understatement. I am very proud of them. Thank you very much. And thank you for your patience. I know we ran a little over time.
No, it's a great story. Nicole, I want a little more clutter in the background of our next speaker. I want a few more pictures behind the speaker that we have behind Ron right now. I want more sticky notes on the bulletin board. You did a great job of propping this shot.
Where it all happens.
Exactly. It's where it all happens. Ron, it's been very charming. I know about the days when you were managing junior sailors all over the place and taking them on great tours, and you're being very modest in the developmental influence you had on creating great sailors all around you. So thanks very much for being our guest. And Nicole, thanks so much for helping put together the program with your pop. It's a great family story, and been our pleasure at the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon to have you guys as our speakers. Thank you very, very much for being our guests. And with that, the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon is adjourned.
Thanks,
Thank-
Ron.
Thanks, guys.